I've been experimenting for a year or so with tallow skincare products, and because they are both niche and on trend right now, they're maybe a little more expensive than they should be to buy on their own, in my opinion. So today we're going to make it. And I am so excited to show you how simple this can be and how practical this is for throwing in your day bag or just having different tallow skincare options for on the go. So the first one is our whipped tallow balm. This is probably the most popular that I see out there that people like. It's what I first discovered with tallow balm. And then here's a non-whipped version. The solid is really nice too. It has a different consistency because it's lacking that air, but it is the same formula and proportions of tallow. And then this one that looks a little bit different here is a salve. So I wanted something for like camping. And then what you see here is some shaving cream, and I absolutely love this stuff. And then to top it off, we've got some tallow chapstick. So we are going to make all of this in this video, and I'm going to show you just how I did it. So the first thing I'm getting out here is just kind of all my stuff. So you don't need chapstick containers or the fancy packaging. When I first started making tallow balm, I actually started with just little 4-ounce mason jars, you know, the kind that you would use for jams, like little strawberry jam jars. As I've continued making it, I've invested a little bit in some travel containers that aren't breakable. So I know a lot of people like to store their tallow products in glass or just skincare in general, but I actually like the aluminum containers or the amber plastic jars. So this is tallow in its raw form. You can buy it in a bucket from Amazon, but I never do that. I just go to my butcher. They sell it as tallow, but technically what I'm getting is unrendered beef fat, and then I throw it in a crock pot and let it simmer for a few hours, or I forget about it for like a day or two and just let it simmer with some water. And then in this Tupperware here, this is actually from my last video I made, which I'll link down below. I was trying to make that hand salve and I added too much beeswax and it just wasn't workable or practical, and I decided that it would make a much better chapstick instead. So I'm going to link all of the formulas down below, and then as soon as I have it ready on my blog, I'll have like a complete blog post too for those that just want to follow along and reference that. But whether you're making any of the skincare products that I showed, whether it's the salves, the balms, the chapsticks, you really only need tallow and then a liquid oil with whatever you're doing. The beeswax is kind of optional, but it is really nice to have if you're making a chapstick. And then I think it's really nice if you want to try and do a hand salve, which will be a little bit more rich than just a traditional balm, because beeswax adds a whole nother protective layer to your skin with its own emollient properties. That being said, I'm glad I didn't try to do anything with beeswax the first time around with making tallow skincare products, because it is a little more finicky. And once it's in, it's in. And so like if you do a lot higher proportions than you should, it's just, you know, something to keep in mind. So here I want to talk about the 3 different things I have going on in the stove. So with the balms, I'm just working with the tallow and breaking it down from scratch. On the far right, I'm melting down that chapstick. And then in the lower right, I have the salve that I'm working on. And that one had the most olive oil content in it, and that's why it looked really green. And so the one with the most liquid oil content melted the fastest, and then the tallow took the longest to melt, being that it is that hard solid fat. So I had all of these on the stove on low, and was trying to just work through all of them at the same time and probably being a little too ambitious, but I wanted to work through it. And then I was going crazy with the essential oils because mine were really, really old and I had to use a lot to try and get the flavor to come through. So essential oils are totally optional, but if you do want your skincare products to have a scented quality, I recommend it. I'm glad I used up these essential oils, but I had to use like twice as many drops as I would have thought. And then as I was doing that, I made sure I had enough of the peppermint essential oil is what I went with coming through. And then I used a little funnel to fill up my chapstick containers, but it was not that necessary. You could do it just pouring it out from a measuring cup. And then I also experimented on a different day with adding some hibiscus powder to make a colored one, but it didn't actually leave my lips that pink, so I'm not sure about the hibiscus, but that is an option if you want to try. And then I was surprised that even though I had 50 chapstick containers in that one little sauce pot, I still had more chapstick product to spare. And I just decided to schlep that into one of those 4-ounce mason jars like I was mentioning and save it for a different day. I can always switch up the essential oils and add something in along with the peppermint too later. So it's just kind of nice to have, if you do have more than you want, you can have just some backup that you store on your shelf. And then finally I got that tallow melted. And what I was showing you there on the camera was that it had like little residue particles. So even though I had already rendered it, I wasn't happy with like the little floaters I was seeing in there. So I tried running it through a metal strainer and it still had little kind of beef particles in there. And so I really didn't want to have that in my, in either of my whipped or solid balms. And so I sacrificed a dishcloth and just ran it through that into another container. And basically, like if you've ever used a cheesecloth, that is what I'm doing here. You can use just a dish towel that's doesn't have like a super tightly woven fabric, or is something that it's kind of tattered and you don't mind going in the trash, because I don't love the idea of washing something covered in tallow and putting that in my wash because it is a solid fat. So I just went with like, okay, here's a stained up cloth. I'm just going to use it to strain out these particles, and I'll probably use it for other things too. And then again, I'm working really hard on the essential oils here. For the balms for today, what I went with is lemon. And I haven't seen anyone do that, but I have absolutely loved the lemon scent. It cuts through if you're like a super smeller. I'm a super taster, I think, and smeller. So I can still pick up a little bit of beef scent even when I wet render tallow. But the lemon cuts through all of that, and it's like a light, refreshing balm. So happy with the lemon. And then I did add some jojoba oil for the balm because I had it on hand and I didn't necessarily want the green tinge that olive oil can sometimes add, because my olive oil I think is just like really, really thick green olive oil. So if you have like a lighter olive oil, it might not be a concern for you. And then something I did different today was mixing in some arrowroot powder. And so this does the same thing as like cornstarch, and it can cut some of the greasiness that tallow leaves on your skin. I went with arrowroot because it's what I have in my kitchen, and I can't find organic cornstarch easily, but I can find organic arrowroot powder, and I use arrowroot powder in my sauces and gravies and ice cream, and you can use it in baking. So it's just a nice thing to have on hand, and now I can use it in my skincare products. So for the non-whipped version, you just pour your consistency straight into whatever container you want to store it in. But for the whipped version, you got to let it solidify on the counter and then add in the air. And I used an immersion blender, so I didn't have to dirty up another bowl. But just be warned that it won't add as much air as a standing mixer or hand mixer will. The tricky part with the whipped versions is just figuring out how you're going to transfer it into the container after you have whipped it. And so I've done it with a spatula, finger, I've piped it in with a plastic bag, but I actually like the non-whipped version, I think, the best. I think it's the prettiest as far as gifts, at least in my opinion. And I really like the matte finish that the arrowroot powder left. And then over here is this skin salve I have been working on this is so many different attempts. Today was like the last attempt, and I think I finally got it. But I am being a bit silly here with using an immersion blender. I just haven't been able to figure out how to work with beeswax that well. So what I ended up doing was just chucking it in the fridge and speeding up the solidifying process, and then whipped just a little bit of air, but I didn't go crazy. And I was happy with that consistency, so then I went ahead and just put it in the jars to the best of my ability. And to make it look a little bit nicer, I used a little skewer to kind of swirl it in the jar. I just did my best with this. This one was the most difficult for me to figure out. This is the part when I realized I've started way too many projects at once, and now my only choice is to finish them. Over here is a new experiment where I'm trying to make some shaving cream for my husband, so we will see how it goes. So the shaving cream actually had the highest oil content outside of the tallow. So we add coconut oil, and we're also adding olive oil. So it's 1 part tallow, 1 part coconut oil, and then 1 part liquid oil. And the end result should be soft, like a soft solid. Definitely not liquid, because then you won't be able to whip air into it. It just won't hold it. And then I blended in here some baking soda before popping it into the fridge. This attempt at making shaving cream has been eluding me because I can't quite get it the right consistency. This obviously doesn't look like a good shaving cream, but my idea is that this is probably just about the right consistency to go ahead and whip. I tried some recipes that were out there online and they failed me. So this is a lot of shaving cream because I had to kept adding more tallow or oil or trying to adjust it. And so, because you can't take out things you've added. So once it's mixed, it's mixed. So I went from having a cup and a half to this to over 2 cups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and beat this in the mixer and see if we can't get some fluffiness going on here and make this a little more appealing. So let's try. So that is another tip I have, is to reserve more tallow, set more tallow, rendered tallow aside than you think you'll need for your recipes in case you need to alter anything and kind of back it out a little bit and make it a little more solid and add more tallow. Same thing with your liquid oil, have a little bit of extra on that on hand so you can adjust it accordingly. But look at this. This is insane what adding air will do to something. I guess I should know this from cooking with whipped cream or meringues or cream cheese, but it's so cool to see the same concept when it comes to skincare. So I was so excited to be jarring this up finally and making my own shaving cream. And I really made this more so for my husband. And this has essential oils of cedar in it. And so that worked really, really nicely. And I'm just so happy with it. If you are at all interested in making your own, I really recommend trying this because I don't think I really ever see natural shaving cream options out there. in the store. And then the other thing that was cool with this is that the arrowroot powder, just like with the balm and the shaving cream, it leaves like an extra little sheen to it, if you can see that coming through here. And I really, really like that. I just think it just has a really beautiful finish. So I'm not even like a huge skincare person, but tallow has kind of made me that way because I feel like suddenly now the world has opened and I can make so many of these specialty things right at home for like less than $10 for all of this. So it's just crazy. My hands are so greasy now. I don't even know if I'll be able to open this. I'm so stoked about this. This is so cool to make a peppermint chapstick out of grass-fed tallow and organic olive oil. Smells great. And this is something that if you have little ones in the house, like they could actually eat your chapstick and be fine. Like I really love this concept of skincare that you can eat because that is very family friendly, and it's not only family friendly for little ones that like to get into things, but it's just good for your skin. Like if it's good enough to eat, it's good enough to put on your skin. And if it's not good enough to eat and you wouldn't eat it, then that's reason to give pause and think like, maybe I shouldn't be rubbing this on my skin, which is an organ and a porous one. So we should think about what we're putting on our skin. So that is what we made here. So excited about the chopsticks. So excited about the shaving creams. The hand salves here. Put it on knees and elbows too. It's very, very moisturizing because of the beeswax. And then of course our beautiful tallow balms. Classic, classic. Like I basically just won't be buying lotion or face creams ever again. Like why? Like I've made so much here for a fraction of the price. Had fun doing it. It's a fun little project. So if you're kind of crafty like that or you like doing little projects, this is a no-brainer. I really, really recommend you trying to do this and just seeing if it works for you. And then once you invest a little bit in some of the ingredients, like, having arrowroot flour, you can use this in a bunch of other kitchen applications, ice creams, soups, gravies, broths, all that. Beeswax. This I pretty much would only use for skincare. I guess you could make some candles. And then you don't need jojoba oil, but this is like a nice to have if you want to do something fancy for yourself. Otherwise, olive oil works. It works great. It does add a little bit more color. It can add a little bit of a green tinge, as you can see from this. It has a lot of olive oil in it, slight green tinge. But if you're whipping air into it or doing something else like that, you probably wouldn't notice. So, and there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of a olive green tinge to something. But yeah, the star ingredient though of this show is, of course, the tallow. If this video is helpful for you at all, please like or subscribe. I am learning how to make videos, so thank you for your patience. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day.